Okay, moving on. So that's for the kind of cosmological argument. And again, I'll attempt to bridge that gap in a bit. The next argument I was going to use is the fine-tuning argument. So the universe is fine-tuned. That's the first premise. Very contentious premises here. And if the universe is fine-tuned, it is either due to design, chance, or necessity. Premise 3, it is not due to chance or necessity, therefore it is due to design. So it's proven by exclusion, right? We can exclude chance and necessity, so it must be design. Now, premise 1, the universe is fine-tuned. And we can appeal to examples of fine-tuning here. And I take this from Luke Barnes, his paper, a PhD physicist. A universe governed by Maxwell's laws all the way down will not have stable atoms, and hence no chemistry. We don't need to know what the parameters are to know that life in such a universe is plausibly impossible. 2 more examples. If gravity were repulsive rather than attractive, then matter wouldn't clump into complex structures. Now, this is important because you can't say maybe another form of life could occur, because this excludes any kind of life. Because if matter can't clump into complex structures, then you can't have life whatsoever, carbon-based, however else life you want to talk about, mysterious forms, you just couldn't have it because matter won't clump up. Moving on, if in electromagnetism, like charges attracted and opposites repelled, then there would be no atoms. Again, you can see why that no sort of life could emerge like this. So these are just some examples of how our constants, the constants of the universe, are fine-tuned because they permit life, right? When they could have not. And so we seek an explanation for why they are such that they permit life instead of otherwise. Then moving on. Premise 2. If the universe is fine-tuned, it is either due to design, chance, or necessity. Now, this is just like a conceptual truth, right? Because the explanatory list, right, that you can give for explanations of fine-tuning, it's exhausted by these 3. It's either necessity, it couldn't have been otherwise. It's either chance, we just beat the chances, or it's design. So then premise 3, and this is, I guess, the most important one, it is not due to chance or necessity. And Luke Barnes, again, citing him, combining our estimates, the likelihood of a life-permitting universe on naturalism is less than 10 to the power negative 136. So lots of zeros after that decimal, a lot of zeros. This, I contend, is vanishingly small. And so on naturalism, the universe is indifferent. The universe isn't going to pick out a set of laws that are life-permitting, right? Because naturalism doesn't care. It's not an agent. It doesn't want to pick out things that are life-permitting, nothing like that. It's indifferent to this. So that's why it's vanishingly small, because we're talking about the entire set of possible ways the universe could have been in terms of constants and laws of nature. So on naturalism, again, indifference. So it's vanishingly small there. Moving forward, why not necessity? Okay, so there's a few reasons for this. The conceivability of different constants. And so we mentioned conceivability before, but to disambiguate the notion, conceivability is not like imagining things in your head. It's not having a mental image of something. To conceive of something is for it to be conceptually possible. So, for example, Superman is Clark Kent, right? But it's conceivable that Superman is someone else, because the notion or the concept of Superman doesn't include Clark Kent. It just includes a superhero. They're distinct notions. You have to observe something about the world to know that Superman is Clark Kent. So that's an example of conceivability, and it's impossible, right? And this is to say that conceivability doesn't always mean possibility, because we're going to want instances of conceivability that don't entail possibility. Like, for example, I'd like to say that we can conceive that God doesn't exist, but it's not possible. But it's a good guide to it. It's not entailing, but it guides us to it. For everyday things we can conceive of, like humans having 3 heads, pigs flying, all of these things are conceivable. We have reasons to think that they're possible, right? So here's the idea. If something's conceivable, then we have prima facie evidence that it's possible. In the absence of defeaters, then we should think it's possible, right? So that's for conceivability. And we can conceive of the laws of nature being different. I can conceive of, for example, those examples I mentioned before with electromagnetism and repelling atoms instead of attracted. moving forward, discussion of counterlegals. So a counterlegal is just like, it's something that goes against the laws of nature, right? Okay, I'll just, since it's on there, I'll have to skip. Where's the evidence, right? So it's up to me to ask, right? What's the evidence that they couldn't have been different? If you want to say they're necessary, you have to give some kind of reason, because it seems totally possible for them to have been different. And the universe began to exist. Is this the only universe that could exist? One with rare parameters that are life permitting? This is an interesting coincidence, and I'm pretty skeptical of it. And so, timeless, spaceless, immensely powerful, immensely intelligent personal being that created the world and designed it, which follows from fine-tuning. And this all men call God. And I guess that's all I have to say.
When it comes to fine-tuning, I realize I don't have much time left. I just completely disagree that the universe is fine-tuned. Yes, sure, we are in existence in a world that is very much chaotic, that could have turned out in many different ways. The thing is, we look around us. As far as we have explored the universe right now, we have not found signs of life on a single planet or satellite of all the ones that we have looked at. What we have is a planet that is full of disaster, full of chaos, full of destruction, and we live despite it while looking for ways to survive better. That doesn't look like fine-tuning, but perfection.
One point you did bring up, and I think this is a really interesting point, is that what we do see is just that life is in a very small part of the world, right? And so, but the argument doesn't entail that the entire universe is going to be saturated with life. All the argument is saying is that the parameters are life permitting, such that life could exist in the world. And that's what's surprising, right? It's surprising on naturalism. No, that's the issue, because there's an indifference there. Naturalism doesn't care. It's not picking something out. So that's the idea. I'm not saying that the entire universe has to be saturated with life. If there's anything you want to comment on that before I move on.
Sure, just a quick question. Let's make a difference between two thoughts based on the idea that the universe is fine-tuned and that life came into existence due to what you might interpret as fine-tuning and what may simply be an arrangement of things. Do you conclude that it is absolutely true, based on these observations, that there is a God, or that it is highly likely that there is a God who did everything?
Are you basically asking whether I think each of these premises has 100% probability of being true?
Yeah.
Well, of course not. That's not how reasoning works. When you go into a discussion, like, most of the time you're bringing premises that are more plausible than their negations, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm trying to bring here. Premises that are more plausible than their negations.
I understand. The reason I'm asking this is that the fine-tuning argument rests on certain observations based upon which we say, okay, there is a chance of this happening and that happening, and based on all these different factors, there is a very high likelihood that this was probably purposely made so, instead of all of that coming into existence randomly. Not only there's a lot of leap of faith, that's many leaps of faith to me. And you could come to many different conclusions. I could say, okay, maybe it is very unlikely that all of this was intelligently designed and planned. Accordingly, I certainly don't see it. But there's still a little possibility that it was not. So why would I use this to base my faith and my entire life on believing in a certain religion or in God?
Because if we're reasonable people, then we accept the best explanation for things. Because the best explanation is just what we ought to believe. If we have a set of data, we have numerous explanations, and one of them is the best, then we just ought to choose that one and believe it. That's what, as rational agents, that's what we should do. And yeah, I'll just pass it back.
And when I hear you say best explanation, what I see there in that argument as a best explanation is not that there is a personal creator who created every single one of us and expects from us a certain thing. What I see is, okay, there's probably something beneath all this that may or may not have designed it. We understand very little from the universe that we have right now, but there may be something above this. I don't see how you possibly come to the conclusion there that it is the one God who is personal and who knowingly created everything for us.
Well, the personal part comes insofar as it's an agent with free will that fine tunes it for life to be permitting, right? That's where the agent or personal being comes in. Something about wanting everyone to have salvation. I'm not arguing for that. I'm arguing for a much more minimal conception here, and I think it's baby steps, right? You go forward, and then you can argue for the next position. But the idea here is that you have a cause for the universe and a designer.
Thank you so much for that. Well, first off, I think there is a misunderstanding, which is I never accepted the fine-tuning argument to begin with as the best possible explanation or as reasonable. I merely asked you certain questions about why you would assume that there is one being instead of an undefined number of beings, or instead of multiple beings, and so on. So I don't accept to begin with the idea that the universe is fine-tuned, or that it looks like it is fine-tuned. I don't think so at all. I think, on the contrary, the universe is full of randomness, full of chaos, full of imperfection. Perfection is not something that is objectively true. It is subjective. It is an observation, something that we merely say in order to refer to something as perfect or imperfect. It doesn't exist in nature. Do you want to?
Yeah, I was hoping you would give me a minute to cover something like that.
Sure.
So about perfection, I don't think the argument entails that the universe would be perfect. In fact, I mean, on my theology, and I don't want to get into theology and scripture, the universe isn't perfect, and it wasn't meant to be perfect. And from the argument alone, you could not derive that it's going to be perfect. So that's not an entailment from the argument. The second one now was that it's chaotic. I think that's a very vague term. What does it mean to say it's chaotic? Are you saying that it's random? Well, what does that mean? If you're saying things are happening for no reason, it just straight up false, because things are happening for a reason, right? The laws, there's order, everything is happening, there's cause and effect, and things are happening according to an order. There's a rhythm, there's a rhyme to the world, and things are going about how they are.
Okay, I can go on with that. So, okay, what I mean by chaotic is actually, I think, very simple. This is my objection to the fine-tuning argument, because I simply do not think that there is anything in the universe that looks like it has been intelligently designed or defined or made. There is no pattern to anything. When it comes to randomness, I'm not saying that everything is completely without purpose. Obviously, we have the Earth that we have right now revolves around a sun. This seems to continue in a certain pattern, although it changes all the time, continuously. We have a moon that we are surrounded with, which goes around us, which also has no perfect pattern. It also changes over time. These are pretty much the things that we can say are in place and serve a specific purpose. The thing is, there is a very wide range of a distance between the Earth and the Sun that would make it possible for life to exist on this planet and to flourish. The Earth could be at many different positions in the solar system that we have right now, and life could still form and still come into existence. There are many other planets in our solar system where life could be existing. We simply do not know yet. But because the distance is not that precise, there could be a huge variety of distances that would make it possible. A moon, we could have multiple moons. We could have just simply one satellite. Doesn't really matter. What we have is a satellite. It helps us function. Here's what I find very funny. You look out into the world. You look out into space. What you see is that there is vastly simply chaos. We are surrounded in our solar system with rocks that are aimlessly flying through the solar system without serving any purpose at all. On the contrary, they keep destroying and simply wandering out there. We have multiple planets, multiple objects in our solar system that have no purpose at all. You could argue that maybe the existence of one big planet protects us from certain rocks, but that is not entirely true, because it also endangers our planet, because it attracts different rocks from the sky. So if we look at our solar system and what we see is it is mostly aimless, chaotic. It doesn't make any sense. If you look outside of our planetary system, what it seems like is that many other stars out there, most stars out there, seem to make no sense, seem to have no aim, are mostly chaotic, came into existence out of chaos. The objects around them are chaotic, mostly serve no purpose at all. So far as we have observed the universe, what we have found is that among all the observed objects in the sky, in space, only ours seems to have found a way to function where life has successfully developed and lived for so long. So the best possible explanation here in this case, if we want to simply rely on the number of observations that we have made, would be that in the universe, it doesn't really look like everything was designed for life. On the contrary, it looks like we simply exist on this planet despite the chaos that we have. And even in this planet, we are currently talking about a possible large-scale destruction of the universe because of climate. We are constantly surrounded by chaos, earthquakes, this and that. So there is no proper design to this. Just because you happen to exist within all the chaos, you cannot simply conclude that this is designed. It's just